I made a timeline. Yeah, a timeline for One Piece, right? Let me explain. We know about the Void Century. We knew about the Void Century for a long time now. 900 years ago, right? It was 100 years taken out of history. Vegapunk recently explained the cause for this 100-year void. 900 years ago is when the war started, and 800 years ago is when it ended. This 100-year gap is the Void Century. Why do I mention that? Well, multiple times in early One Piece, dates even older than the Void Century were mentioned. Even in Skypiea, the arc everybody skipped. Not only was the Void Century also mentioned in Skypiea, but a date was mentioned along with it. Nico Robin was in the ruins of Shandara talking about the City of Gold. She realized that the artifacts predated 1,100 years ago. She also mentions the date or the time around when it was destroyed, 800 years ago. Now that Vegapunk has given us more information about the Void Century, we know that 800 years ago is around when the war ended. 100 years before that, 900 years ago for us, is when the war began. We also know from the Skypiea arc that the island that they were on from Jaya was shot into the sky from the, I forgot what they were referred to as, so I'll say the underwater volcano shot the island into the sky. Maybe it was on purpose, maybe it was serendipity. Now we know that Joy Boy was born 900 years ago in this advanced kingdom of science, or whatever you want to call it. Joy Boy being born 900 years ago, also when this war was known to start, is a good marker to begin this chart I made. As you see on the screen, the age of the sea circle is the calendar system. They probably got that name. This is when the Void Century was over and the world began flooding. It's crazy how things connect, but that's for a separate video. Let me explain this chart now. And this chart is using a lot of information that we already know about One Piece's world, because other characters have said it and we've seen it on papers or whatever, the calendars and whatnot, the poneglyphs. So let me break down this chart and all these dates and years. I'll explain everything. There are a lot of words on screen, but ignore everything right now but for what I'm talking about. So Cayenne. I'll explain the Cayenne word later. You see the gap, the Void Century, where the war is. That's 900 years ago to 800 years ago. We know Joy Boy was born 900 years ago when the war started, supposedly. 100 years after that is when it ended. He had a long life. Celestial dragons were formed. Joy Boy was defeated. And the world government was created. Don Quixote family took their throne, started reigning over the Tontatas and whatnot. Princess Lily, Nefertari D. Lily, she went missing. Okay, she also spread the poneglyphs around at the end of this war. That's when the Void Century was over, I guess you could say. The 100-year gap is the Void Century. We don't know what happened. Now, let's fast forward to the timeline, catch up to present day, just a little bit. You're not confused as to where I'm getting a lot of these dates from. Let's talk about the present year in One Piece. The word Cayenne pops up multiple times. The Sea Circle calendar used it, and Nolan's journal used it, marking the year. Nami found Nolan's logbook, and it had the year 1120 Cayenne written on it. That was about 400 years ago. So the year 1120 was 400 years ago, like this says. If you do the math, add 400 to that, the present day that she found that journal would have been 1520, 1520. Now that was back in Skypiea. There's been a 3-year time skip since then. So I used the 3-year time skip on my chart and I add 3 years onto the present day and make it 1523. That's the current year they're in after the time skip. I don't know if anybody mentioned this before. Let me know if anybody mentioned this. Not only knowing the present day being 1520 and the year that Nolan logged in his logbook was 1120, That's a good range to subtract any number from any amount of years. For example, when in present day they're speaking of God Valley 38 years ago, we can now surmise that that was in the year 1485. That was God Valley. Again, I haven't heard anybody say that. Let me know if you heard that before. I did this chart on my own. I didn't really look at any other dates. I did the research for the present date. You can see really small on the top, right underneath 1523. This is the dawn of the pirate era. That's minus 15 years ago. That's when the Great Pirate Era started. Okay. This means that Roger died in the year 1505, 15 years before the start of One Piece, before the 3-year time skip. 1520 minus 15 is 1505. That was the year he died. Now, when you look at all these years and the accuracy that Oda has been planting the whole time throughout his story, by having all these years salt and pepper throughout the narrative, and any point in any arc, a year is mentioned sometimes, right? You can go forward and backwards to find out kind of when things happen, and based on the accuracy of Oda's current dates, he's saying that the Void Century happened 900 years ago. Robin rounds up and she rounds down too, I won't lie. So if it's around 900 years ago, because around here she says over 1,000 years ago, and the city was destroyed 800 years ago. At this current point in time, she says 800 years ago like it's a fact for certain. I guess you do have to take into consideration that before the 3-year time skip, they would say 800 years ago is when the war ended, or when the Void Century ended. And they'd say it now, but Nico Robin rounds up and rounds down for the years. When she talks about a year that happened around 239, she'll still say about 200 years ago. If it's higher, she'll say 300 years ago, at least from what I gathered. But what's really important in these panels is that the dates that Robin mentions are even predating the Void Century, okay? Because doing the math, year 1120 was around when Nolan charted his journal. That's 400 years ago. So if you go 400 years even before then, you can find out about what year it was when the Void Century ended. Can you not? If you go 100 years before that, you can find out what year Joy Boy was born in. Now look at the dates that Robin is mentioning. 325, 306, 260, 239. These are the years, the Kayan that she's mentioning. Okay, those are the years that the Alabasta Kingdom was formed. The previous kings took over. This other guy, the people that she's mentioning, who was a great hero, started doing this one thing. She's talking about dates that pre-exist Joy Boy. Now, I did the math here for you. So we know Nolan was around the year 1120. That's 400 years ago. Let's not include the 3-year time skip. So we're going from the year 1520, 400 years back. Okay, that's 1120. That's the year Nolan's logbook was charted. That's the date he wrote on it. 400 years prior to Nolan's journal and his visit to Jaya, or Chandala. And 1120 Kayan. 400 years prior to that. 400 plus 400 is 800. So 800 years ago, that's when the war ended. 800 years ago, in the present date, not including the 3-year time skip, would be the year 720. Kayan 720. Read the text above. You see that the Tantata War with Don Quixote began when the Void Century started. Okay, I might have said it ended. I might have said the wrong way earlier, but here it is for you. This is another event that was charted to have happened, and we know the date, we know the time, how long ago it was. So 900 years ago during the Void Century, that's also when Joy Boy was born. 100 years before the end of the war, that will be the year 620. 620 Kayan. You can surmise that Joy Boy was born on the year 620. This is when the Void Century War started. Okay, 900 years ago. Oh, 900 years would be 620. You can subtract 500 years from Nolan's logbook date, or you can subtract 900 years from the current date, 520. Joy Boy was born in the date 620. Okay? God Valley happens in 1485, as you see. 38 years before then, 1120, is Nolan doing his thing on Jaya. Okay? 400 years prior to that, Joy Boy was defeated. The world government was created in the year 720 of the world. 100 years before then, Joy Boy was born. Okay, that's 900 years ago. Joy Boy was born in the year 620. Nico Robin mentioned the dates of 320, 329, 306, 206, and all that sort of shit. So this is talking about times even before 1,000 years ago. I wrote Pangea there because this is possibly when the whole world, or at least multiple continents, were still full together. Like I theorized before, it didn't happen exactly like I thought, but yes, the world was together, like many people theorized. Okay, the sea rising made everything separate. But for the date 320 to exist on the Kayan chart, you see what I wrote, Kayan 100. That's over 1,400 years ago for Kayan 100 to start. That over 1,500 years ago would be the beginning of this chart ever starting. If the present date is 1520, that means that's how long the date has been getting recorded for. So this timeline started 1,500 years ago, over 1,500 years ago. At least that's when the date has been recorded. Prior to that, we don't know. Over 500 years before Joy Boy, maybe even 2,000 years before Joy Boy. It's probably, my guess, when Sun God Nika existed. I feel like this is all going to be coming around full circle. The part of history that we're currently dealing with is just Joy Boy's history. As you see on the chart, the unknown history, Pangea, when the world was all still multiple continents. Even around when Joy Boy lived, that's all prior to 800 years ago. Everything was together. For the most part, it's probably multiple continents, not one all big continent, but maybe multiple continents that got flooded. Now everybody's living at the highest points in those lands. We know that. Vegapunk said that. So 1,000+ years before Joy Boy existed, some shit was going on. Because One Piece's chart only dates from 1,500 years ago. That was the present date, plus the 3-year time skip. The age of the sea circle, as you see on screen, one of the 2 calendar systems in the One Piece world. The only other systems we know that kept track of time would be the scholars of Ohara had a giant Ori inside of their fucking research room. If you don't know what that is, it's the giant like planetary models, you know, that show how the sun and the planets align and how the planets revolve around the sun. But in One Piece's case, the planetary model that they had was more of a, I think they call it a geocentric model. That's the belief that everything revolves around the Earth. That's the model that they had. Everything wasn't revolving around the sun for them. But even then, there's no dates spoken on their charts. And all this information that Vegapunk just divulged is stuff that they knew. But they knew even less than him. If you want me to make a better video, a better chart or diagram of the timeline, I will. But the poneglyphs were spread 800 years ago. That's when the war ended. There's a lot of dates here. I think this chart is accurate. If you don't think it's accurate, let me know. I think I mentioned a couple dates that nobody mentioned, being God Valley and when Roger died, even Joy Boy's birth on the year 620 or maybe 600. But who knows? We're gonna have to find out what happened before Joy Boy. 500 years before he was here, something happened. Maybe 1,000 prior.